Yeah.
Internationalism becomes a real thing. You also had the international working people's movement, the communists. It's international. Like they saw themselves as bringing the working classes of the world together.
It's the predicate of the entire Cold War, Red Scare.
Yeah, and then World War I happens, and the rise of nationalism the rise of nationalism that was a reaction to globalization in the 1900s and 10s, creates World War I, and then produces this like intense retreat away from globalization into this the post World War I period, where everyone is kind of retrenching and isolationism becomes this the dominant ethos, which then produces like even hyper nationalism, and then we get World War II out of it.
Yeah.
The book argues that what the proponents of liberal globalization the first time around didn't understand is that it was actually making things worse. It was making things better if you lived in London and you were in the top 5 to 10%. There was some famous quote: you could order something, you could order anything you wanted from around the world and have it by the end of the day in like 1910 or in London or something. But that was you. Like that was not 90+% of people from England, and it particularly was devastating for people around the world. And so she's right that there is this interesting parallel going on, and that isolationism can lead to cataclysmic world war. It's a paradox. Like, well, how could that possibly be?
Do you think that's what she meant, though? Because I see it as more.
I think she's just throwing out platitudes.
Well, she's definitely doing that.
Yeah.
But I think it's also because her worldview is shaped by the post-Cold War Fukuyama internationalism, which is very different from
she also very much wants the U.S. to continue to be the global cog.
Exactly. Yeah. And
I think
that's
moment on Charlemagne where he's like, the first caller was like, "Why are we spending all this money on these wars?"
Yeah.
And she's like, "Because if we retreat, we're not safe." And like, so she really like makes this argument that the U.S. has to be a global superpower, or else our national security suffers, and nobody buys that.
Well, it's interesting because I think also Trump does buy that. Like Trump has the same general perspective. He has a different way of getting from point A to point B, but he would also say that America's prosperity depends on its empire. He just would say he wants it to be a more logical empire. I mean, that's the Greenland, Panama approach, Taiwan approach to all of this. He thinks it should be a more like
the old school,
more like logical, efficient empire than a sort of sprawling USAID empire. So what Tucker Carlson refers to as gay race communism. That's the
what's he called? Gay race communism?
Gay race communism, which should be a bumper sticker that you have on your van, by the way.
Would I be for it or against it?
You're very for it.
Okay. Race. Not even trying to make sense.
But, I mean, you'd be for it and against it, I suppose. But that's what they would say, right? That it's not about the sprawling, like, USAID, pro-China integration with our adversaries and all of that. So it's in a way, it's the same thing, but it's a different approach to it. And I think Kamala Harris situating herself in this way polling again, it's not a surprise that because of name recognition, she's at the top of polls. When you look at 2028 presidential candidates, I think she's definitely not running away from it. There was a quote in the Times recently of Kamala Harris saying she's staying in the fight, I think is the paraphrased version of what she said. So she may be speaking at the Australian Real Estate Conference 2025, but she's very much still involved in American politics. She could run for California governor. And California is one of the largest economies in the world, just as a state alone. It's one of the, I think it's like top 10
or something like
that. Yeah, it's huge. So she's not going anywhere, that's for sure.
And we may end up using what we're about to talk about as the headline for this segment. If we do, apologies for making you sit through the Australian Real Estate Convention. But in more Kamala Harris news, in the Jake Tapper, Alex Thompson book, Original Sin, there's this anecdote that says that she was quite angry at Anderson Cooper because for pushing her so aggressively on why is Joe Biden having a medical episode in front of the entire country during this debate and not letting the kind of scripted line that she had come up with just sit and then move on. And so Harris told her colleagues, quote, "This mother grabber doesn't treat me like the dang vice president of the United States," she said to colleagues. So in the book, the longer episode is kind of, well, we'll play the Anderson Cooper clip in a second. I remember we covered it at the time. It was quite something. So it goes through her watching the debate with her staff, and she's like, how are people responding? And they're like, "Boss, people are calling for him to drop out." Like, he's literally dying up on stage. And the Biden campaign reaches out to her and says, "Why don't you go ahead and cancel all these like media hits that you have tomorrow? Because we don't really see what the upside is in you going on and talking about this." And she said, "No, absolutely not. I'm going for it." So then they sit down and they debate, how they're going to respond. What talking points can they come up with to respond to this medical episode that the entire country just witnessed? And they talk so long, they miss CBS this morning because they just talk right through it. They miss another one, and then they go on Anderson Cooper, and they had come up with the line. Well, just you'll see the talking points. Let's roll this Anderson Cooper back and forth.
He was a very different person on the stage 4 years ago when you debated him. You must, I mean, that's certainly true, is it not?
Anderson, the point has to be performance in terms of what a president does. A president who incites an insurrection against the Capitol. No, but I got the point that you're making about a 1.5 hour debate tonight. I'm talking about 3.5 years of performance in work that has been historic.
But
whether
is that
it be
the man who we
the
saw
former
on the
guy,
stage
the other
tonight,
guy,
is that the
other
person
guy
you
on
see
the
in
debate
meetings every day?
stage.
And
Anderson.
Oh. According to the book, the Biden staff loved that line. That wasn't part of the talking point, but this line she came up with, that you're talking about an 1.5 hour debate. I'm talking about 3.5 years of genius delivering for the American people. The Biden campaign loved that. All of it was pointless.
Yeah.
Like, there are not words that you can put together to make people unsee what they saw.
But this is a problem that Kamala Harris never will ever run away from, and it's one that the book identifies. The book shows that she identified immediately. It's obvious that she's locked into this position where, as she says in the book, what do I do if I distance? What do I look like if I distance myself from Joe Biden? I look disloyal. And she's not wrong. I mean, you'd look
and then
like—
if you don't, you look like an enabling moron.
Yeah, and she will
liar.
never get away from this.
Right.
I mean, there's no way. This is the defining— I mean, she was the vice president. It's not like she was the green job czar. She was the vice president of the United States and was regularly— that clip you just saw was literally right after the debate, but she has 3.5 years of defending him. So that's how most people remember her. She was a senator before. So people's memory of Kamala Harris prominently is as Joe Biden's vice president. And I just think it's a permanent stain that she's never really going to be able to shake.
Yeah, and Democrats deliberately nominated the person who was in precisely the worst position to talk about the thing that people were most concerned about at that moment, which was this lie that they all told about whether or not Biden was there or not.
Yeah.
Like, if they'd have picked anybody else, Shapiro, Whitmer, Newsom, and literally any other human being other than the vice president, they would have more distance from Biden and more ability to say, I was just as shocked as you were when I saw that, and I am angry about the cover-up. You can't have the vice president, because the vice president would have to admit that they weren't actually in the meetings and paying any attention.
Exactly.
In order.
Yeah, it's interesting because that shows—
Like that Johnny Cash song.
Which one?
I mean, I don't think he wrote the song, but it's the one where the only way that the guy could get off of the capital punishment, getting hanged, was to admit that he was in the arms of his best friend's wife. Because his alibi was, to him, worse than just getting hanged for a murder he didn't commit.
Yes. It's interesting because it shows Kamala Harris being sort of undermined by the thing